For today's lesson, we're going to be working on the posed figure. Basically what we're going to do is this model exactly, we're going to turn her into a croquis pose that you can use for the rest of the semester. When you print out this handout, you're going to notice that the photo is a little bit washed out and kind of not very bright and crisp. And I did this intentionally because we're about to draw on top of her. So far, we've already analyzed the static pose and two different standing pose. This third standing pose is this one down here. Now you should have already analyzed these three girls on your own time, and what we'll do together is we're going to analyze her now to get ready to start drawing her into this pose right here. On the last page of your homework, you're going to have two girls also completed, and they're going to be mirror opposites of each other. And we'll talk about this more at the end of the video. The tools that you'll be needing will be your 1H or 2H art pencil. If you don't have one, you can just use a mechanical pencil. And if you prefer using mechanical pencils, this is your time to use it. We'll also be using a regular number 2 pencil, or if you have the artist HB pencil. And then you're going to want a red and blue color pencil, as well as a detail eraser, a regular eraser, your clear ruler. If you're following this video and you do not have any of the handouts, it's okay. Just use a 8.5 by 14 inch piece of legal paper, and I'll quickly teach you how to do the layout before we start drawing the girl. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and analyze this pose before we start to draw it. We've already worked on analyzing the static pose where she has her weight evenly distributed on both feet. And then we had a standing pose where she had 35% of her weight on one foot, 65% on the other foot. And now we have the hips popping to the left, shoulders popping to the right. And then we moved on to the more extreme pose where she has 100% of her weight on one foot and her hips are popping at an even more dramatic angle, as well as her shoulders. If you have not gone through these videos yet, I recommend to watch them now before you get started on doing this video with us together. So take out your number 2 pencil, and the first thing you want to do is you want to find the plumb line on your model. Now I've already put a little tiny pin line in here, but I want you to go ahead and pretend as if though you're finding this for yourself. What we want to do is we want to know basically where her throat is, but she's wearing a collared shirt. So what would help is if we just quickly trace off this collared shirt. And then we'll have a sense here of where the button is. So that would be the button right on the front of her shirt. And then we'll know basically that is the plumb line. Now I've made sure that this girl is perfectly straight up and down. So what you can do is you can draw on the plumb line while also making sure you're square with your piece of paper. Let's go ahead and start here with her bodice. What I want to do is I want to find my best guess on what the angles are for her bust, shoulders, and rib cage. Go ahead and lightly just trace off the shoulder and where you think the seam is before it turns into her sleeve. Once you have that in place, let's go ahead and put a dot somewhere here on basically the peak of this shoulder, the peak of that shoulder. And then we can come in here and we can find the angle that her shoulders are going. So what we're noticing is this is her left side, this is her right side, and it's popping upwards to the right side. Using this information now, we can come down to the bust level as well as the bottom of the rib cage and get those same angles so they're all parallel. So come down in here to where you think basically is her armpits. And the most important thing is you're staying parallel with your ruler. Now for finding the bottom of her rib cage, we need to know the shape of her waist and the center of her body. What we can do is to find the center of the body here, come back a little bit above this button on her shirt, so this would be her throat area, and bring in your ruler here, and I want you to make your ruler square with these new shoulder and bust lines. And this is her new center front. Now with this center front, we can come over here to eventually start to guess where the waist is and make it even on both sides. Because her shirt has a relaxed fit on there, it's kind of hard to see it. So what we should do is we should go down and start to find what the legs are doing, and that'll help us even further. Now in this pose, it's hard to see what exactly is going on with her waist, her full hip, her hip bones. But we can come down here into the knees and see what the angle of the knees are doing to come back up and find those angles. This leg here, she's pushing it forward more towards the camera and extending this leg out and kind of exaggerating what her knees are doing. And her hips are going to be following that as well, but not quite as extreme. So when we come down here to analyze the knees and the angle of the knees, we need to be a little bit conservative and not have it be too much of a crazy angle. So let's start with this straightforward facing knee and just find the basics of the kneecap and what would be the center of that. The second one here, it's tempting to put the kneecap down really low, but what I want you to do is just back it off going upwards a little bit more to find the center of that kneecap. Now we can come in here and find the angle of the knees. And you'll notice here it is popping to her left. Now using this information, we can come back up to find her full hip area and high hip and top of hip bones. Now what we can do is we can come down and analyze what the ankles are doing. Now even though her knees are uneven, they're the level, once you come down to the floor, her feet are basically hitting the same floor, so after a while they start to square back up again. But this foot here will be slightly lower than that one because of the angles of her knees. It's just not as exaggerated as this. Alright, so at first let's ignore this foot and let's analyze this one right here. So come in here to your inside ankle, which is higher than the outside ankle. That one's lower, the ankle bones. And then let's make a circle for what would be about the middle of those two and find the center of that. Then let's come over to this one here. So again, there's the outside ankle, or the inside ankle, the outside ankle. Make a circle for it and put a dot in the center of that. Now if we connect these two ankles, you're going to notice based on the plumb line, they're almost square and straight across with the plumb line. So even though her knees are at an angle, once you get down to the ankles, they're squaring back up with the floor. If we come down here to the bottom of this shoe, and if we make sure that we're staying square with the plumb line from the bottom of the shoe, when you come over to this shoe, you're going to see that this foot goes a little bit lower than that one there. So basically her right foot is a little bit more closer to the camera than her left foot. Now come back here to the ankles, and using this line where we were connecting the middles of them, let's go ahead and move this up to find the tops of the ankles, and then move it down to find the bottoms of the ankles. So here, if you were doing a ankle length hem on a dress, or if you're drawing some pants, they would come down to this bottom of the ankle line, and it's parallel with the top of the ankle, and it's parallel with the centers of the ankle. Again, her feet are almost square with the plumb line. It just has a little bit of an angle. But what we'll do is over here, we'll draw an arrowhead so we know that the angle is slightly going towards her left side. Now, in order to determine what's going on with the center front and her full hip and high hip and hip bones, we kind of need to know where is the bottom of her swimsuit, and that'll help determine everything else. What we need to do is we need to determine where that location is. Come over here to where you can see what the leg is doing. So take your best guess on what you think her skin is doing underneath here. Keeping in mind that the skirt itself sticks out a little bit more than what her leg is doing. So her leg is inside of that. And let's do the same thing over here. Her hand is kind of blocking what's going on over here, but we can guess that this leg traveling, heading up to here, and eventually is coming into a waist area. So just take your best guess and draw this in lightly, because we might need to erase a few things later. Now I can bring this one in to what I think is probably her waist over here. And this helps give my eye a guide for when I come in here for drawing the inside of her right leg and the inside of her left leg. Now if you'll notice, here's the plumb line, and her left leg is a lot closer to the plumb line than her right leg, which would mean the bottom of her swimsuit is here off center, and this is correct. Let's just kind of come down and guess where you think that location would be. For me, I think I put the bottom of her swimsuit a little bit too high, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to just move that location down a little bit. And then I know moving up above that will be her full hip location. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a dot here that's a little bit above that. And I want to make sure that I'm also parallel with the knees down here. Come out to here and draw an arrow. This is the direction that her hips are popping towards. And then we can come down back here to that bottom of the swimsuit and make sure that you're following the same angle as well. Now what we can do is I want to come up here and kind of guess what do I think is the top of her hip bones, and later on we'll have the bottom of her rib cage. So just come in here and think about where the waist would be, and also take a notice the distance going from this new center front over to the waist and to the opposite waist on this side. And make sure that it's even on both sides. So I'm going to just guess about here, and here's the top of the hip bones. I want to make sure that when I draw my line for the hip bones, that I'm following what the knees and the full hip are doing. And over here, let's write pop. So come down a little bit, and we'll also have the top of her jeans, so this will be the high hip location. So now we have top of hip bones, high hip, full hip, bottom of the swimsuit, and the knees, and they're all traveling in the same direction. Take out your blue color pencil, and what I want you to do is I want you to connect these 4 lines all the way down. And connect them, making sure that you are square with those lines. And this will signify that this area is all locked together. Now come down here to her full hip. And what we're going to do is we're going to completely ignore the plumb line. So this plumb line is no longer valuable up in this area. And we want to find the halfway distance from this side of her hip to this side of the hip. We need to know the halfway point. And it's going to be somewhere here off the plumb line. So take your best guess and check it. Until you find where that location is. So again, this is halfway between these two locations. Then what we can do is, this is going to be the center front at the bottom of the swimsuit, and it will be traveling square with these hips. It's going to travel upwards, and it should hit somewhere where it's going to align with the center front coming down. So the bottom of the swimsuit here, center front goes all the way back up to there, and it's square here with her hips. Now that we have this center front for the lower body, we can come in here and we know what about the width of the bottom of her swimsuit. Again, make this really small. And then you travel up to halfway in between here. And whatever the distance is you found right here, let's go ahead and get the same curve over this area. And now we can go ahead and finish connecting the leg back down to where it's going. And again, you're just taking your best guess on what's going on here underneath the skirt. Now that we have a good sense of where the waist is, and also it's evenly divided coming back to the new center front, we can take a good guess on where the rib cage is. So I'm guessing somewhere in this area. And then what I can do is I need to make sure that the rib cage is now parallel with the shoulders and her armpits and bust level. So now take out your red color pencil, and what we'll do is we'll square it up here for the bodice. So make sure that you're parallel and square with what the bodice angles are doing. And now we can go ahead and finish connecting back up to her shoulders. And go ahead and draw in the ovals for the shaping of her armholes. And just so we don't get confused, what we'll do is we'll use the red for drawing the center front above the bodice. And then we'll use the blue for drawing the new center front below the bodice for the lower body. And then let's go ahead and shade her waist area, just so you know where this location is. And then here at the waist, if you come down to her top of hip bones, this would be her belly button. And now you're starting to get a really good sense of what is going on with the croquis for her upper body, center front, and the lower body, center front. Now we're ready to take this model and turn it into a croquis. For those of you who are using a blank piece of paper,